Most people spend their entire life pointing fingers at everything around them instead of looking at themselves. When something goes wrong, their first reaction is not reflection, it is blame. They blame life, they blame circumstances, they blame people, they blame timing, they blame luck, and sometimes they even blame destiny. It becomes a habit, and slowly that habit turns into a mindset. A mindset that feels comfortable but silently destroys growth. Blaming life always feels easier than facing yourself. Because when you blame life, you don't need to change anything about yourself. You don't need to fix your habits. You don't need to improve your discipline. You don't need to face your weaknesses. You simply shift responsibility outside, and for a moment, your mind feels light. It feels like you have explained your situation. It feels like you have justified your failure. But in reality, you have only avoided the truth. The truth is uncomfortable, but it is powerful. Life is not actively stopping you. Life is responding to you. Your actions, your habits, your consistency, your discipline, and your mindset are shaping your reality far more than external circumstances. Two people can be in the same environment, facing the same struggles, and still end up in completely different places. Not because life treated them differently, but because they responded differently. One person takes responsibility and starts improving himself. He fixes his habits. He controls his time. He focuses on growth instead of excuses. The other person keeps blaming life. He waits for better conditions. He waits for motivation. He waits for luck. And slowly, time passes. Years move forward. Opportunities disappear. And the gap between both people becomes wider and wider. This is how most lives are silently decided. Not in one big moment, but in thousands of small choices. Every time you blame life, you give away your power. Every time you say, "I can't because of my situation," you reinforce the idea that you are not in control. And when you believe you are not in control, you stop trying to improve what is actually within your control. Real change begins when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What am I doing that is keeping me here?" This shift changes everything. Because now you are no longer a victim of circumstances. You become the creator of your response. The hard truth is this: life will never become perfect. Conditions will never be ideal. Timing will never feel fully right. There will always be problems, pressure, and uncertainty. If you wait for life to become easy before you take responsibility, you may wait forever. That is why growth starts with a decision. A decision to stop pointing at life and start looking at yourself. A decision to stop blaming and start building. A decision to accept that while you cannot control everything around you, you can always control what you do next. And that is where real transformation begins. Blame feels easy, but it keeps you stuck. Blame is one of the most common habits in human behavior. And it is also one of the most dangerous when it comes to personal growth. The reason it spreads so easily is simple. Blame feels comfortable. It gives instant relief. It removes pressure from your mind and shifts responsibility away from you. For a moment you feel lighter, like your situation has been explained. But in reality, nothing changes except your mindset becoming weaker over time. When something goes wrong in life, the human brain naturally tries to protect itself. It looks for a reason outside the self. It says it was the situation, it was other people, it was bad luck, it was timing, or it was circumstances. This reaction happens quickly because accepting personal responsibility feels uncomfortable. It forces you to look inward, and looking inward requires honesty, effort, and change. But blame does something very dangerous. It creates an illusion of innocence. It makes you feel like you are not responsible for your current position. And if you are not responsible, then logically you also feel like you cannot change it. This is where people get trapped for years. They keep explaining their problems instead of solving them. Every time you blame life, you give away a part of your power. Because blame and responsibility cannot exist together. If life is responsible for your situation, then you are not. But if you are not responsible, then you are also not the solution. That is why blaming life never leads to progress. It only leads to repetition of the same problems. Many people live in this cycle for years without realizing it. They talk about their struggles constantly. They explain why things are not working. They describe how difficult their situation is. but they rarely take real action to change it. Over time, this becomes a mindset of helplessness, a mindset where life is always in control and they are always reacting. Successful people think differently. They do not waste energy on finding someone to blame. Instead, they focus on what they can control. Even in unfair situations, they look for responsibility within themselves. Not because everything is their fault, but because responsibility is the only place where change is possible. If you look closely at your own life, you will notice a pattern. Every time you blamed life, nothing improved. The situation stayed the same or repeated again later. But every time you took responsibility, even in a small way, something started shifting. That is because responsibility leads to action, and action leads to change. Blame feels powerful in the moment, but it is actually a silent form of surrender. It convinces you that you are not the problem, but it also removes your ability to solve the problem. That is why people stay stuck for years in the same patterns, repeating the same complaints while expecting different results. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Blame does not fix life. It freezes it. And the longer you stay in blame, the longer your life stays the same. Your reflection is built by your actions. Your life is not something that randomly happens to you. It is something that is gradually built by you through your daily actions. Most people fail to see this connection clearly. They separate their results from their behavior and then wonder why nothing is changing. But in reality, your current life is a direct reflection of what you repeatedly do every day. Every action you take leaves a trace. It may not show results immediately, but over time, those traces form patterns, and those patterns become your lifestyle. If your daily actions are careless, distracted, and inconsistent, your life will naturally reflect confusion and stagnation. If your daily actions are focused, disciplined, and intentional, your life will slowly begin to reflect progress and stability. The problem is that many people want a better life without changing the actions that created their current life. They want success without effort. They want progress without consistency. They want discipline without discomfort. But life does not work on desire alone. Life responds to behavior, not wishes. When people feel stuck, they often say life is not fair. But what they fail to realize is that fairness is not the main issue. Patterns are. The truth is that your current situation is not the result of one single decision. It is the result of hundreds and thousands of small decisions repeated over time. Small choices that seemed unimportant in the moment slowly created your present reality. Waking up late every day does not look like a big problem at first, but repeated over months, it creates laziness and wasted time. Scrolling on your phone for hours does not feel harmful at first, but repeated daily, it destroys focus and discipline. Avoiding difficult tasks feels comfortable in the moment, but over time it builds weakness and fear of effort. On the other hand, positive actions also build strong outcomes. Studying a little every day creates knowledge over time. Practicing a skill daily builds mastery. Exercising regularly builds strength and confidence. Saving small amounts consistently builds financial stability. These results do not come suddenly, but they are always the outcome of repeated effort. Your reflection in life works like a mirror. It shows you exactly what your actions are producing. If you do not like what you see, the solution is not to blame the mirror. The solution is to change what is standing in front of it. That means changing your behavior, your habits, and your discipline. Blaming life will never change your reflection. Only changing yourself will. Because life is not separate from your actions. It is shaped by your actions. Every result you experience today is connected to something you did repeatedly in the past. If you want a different future, you must start acting differently today. Not occasionally, not temporarily, but consistently. Because consistency is what turns actions into identity and identity into results. In the end, your life is not something happening to you. It is something you are continuously creating through what you do every single day. The power of self-responsibility is the point where real transformation begins. It is the moment when a person stops seeing life as something happening to them and starts seeing life as something they are actively responding to. This shift may look simple in words, but in reality, it is one of the hardest mental changes a human being can make. Most people are trained, from a very early stage, to look outside themselves for reasons. When something goes wrong, they search for someone or something to blame. It becomes automatic. The situation, the environment, the family, the society, the economy, or even luck becomes the explanation. This external thinking slowly removes internal responsibility. And when responsibility disappears, so does control. Self-responsibility does not mean that everything that happens in your life is your fault. That is not the idea. The idea is that everything that happens in your life is your responsibility to respond to. There is a huge difference between fault and response. Fault keeps you stuck in the past. Responsibility pushes you toward the future. When you take responsibility, you stop wasting energy on things you cannot change and start focusing on things you can change. You may not control where you started in life, but you always control the next step you take. You may not control what people did to you, but you control what you do next. You may not control the situation, but you control your reaction to the situation. This mindset changes everything because it removes helpless thinking. Helpless thinking is the root of stagnation. When people believe they have no control, they stop trying. They stop improving. They stop learning. They start waiting. Waiting for life to get better, waiting for motivation, waiting for opportunities, waiting for something external to fix their internal problems. But life does not reward waiting. It rewards action. And action only comes when responsibility is accepted. Self-responsibility also builds mental strength. When you stop blaming others, you stop giving away your power. You begin to trust yourself more because you know that no matter what happens, you will respond and move forward. This creates confidence, not the fake confidence of words, but the real confidence of experience. People who take responsibility stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do now?" That small change in question creates a massive change in direction. Because one question keeps you stuck in emotion, while the other pushes you toward solution. Even in difficult situations, responsibility creates clarity. Instead of feeling lost, you start seeing options. Instead of feeling trapped, you start seeing possibilities. Instead of blaming life, you start building direction. Over time, this habit reshapes your identity. You stop thinking like a victim of circumstances and start thinking like the creator of your response. And once that identity is formed, your actions naturally begin to change. Self-responsibility is not just a mindset. It is a turning point. It is the moment where your life stops being something you complain about and starts becoming something you actively shape every single day. Change begins when excuses end. Excuses are one of the most silent yet powerful forces that keep people stuck in the same place for years. They do not look dangerous on the surface. In fact, they often sound reasonable, logical, and even responsible. But behind that surface, excuses are simply a way to avoid discomfort and delay action. And every time you accept an excuse, you are not just avoiding work, you are also avoiding growth. Most excuses are built to protect comfort. The mind does not naturally enjoy difficulty, effort, or pressure. So when a task feels hard, the mind quickly creates a reason to postpone it. I am too tired. I will start tomorrow. I don't have enough time. Today is not the right day. These statements feel true in the moment, but they are often just emotional reactions, not real limitations. The problem with excuses is not that they exist, but that people believe them repeatedly. One excuse does not change your life, but repeated excuses become a pattern, and that pattern slowly becomes your lifestyle. You stop doing things not because you cannot, but because you have trained your mind to avoid discomfort. Every time you listen to an excuse, you weaken your discipline. Because discipline is built through action, not intention. When you choose comfort instead of effort, your brain learns that avoiding work is acceptable. Over time, this makes discipline harder and excuses stronger. People who achieve success are not people who never feel lazy or tired. They are people who refuse to obey excuses. They act even when they do not feel like it. They understand that waiting for perfect conditions is a trap. If you wait for everything to feel right, you will spend your entire life waiting. Excuses also create a false sense of progress. You feel like you have a reason, so your mind becomes calm. But calmness in excuses is dangerous because it hides stagnation. You feel peaceful while your life remains unchanged. Days pass, weeks pass, and nothing improves. But because excuses are constantly present, the delay feels justified. Breaking this cycle requires awareness. You must start noticing when you are using excuses instead of making decisions. You must question yourself honestly. Is this a real limitation, or is this just discomfort? Is this truly impossible, or is it simply difficult? Change begins when you stop negotiating with excuses, when you stop allowing them to make decisions for you. Because every time you override an excuse and take action instead, you strengthen your discipline. And every time you accept an excuse, you weaken it. Excuses are not powerful because they are true. They are powerful because they are repeated. But the moment you stop repeating them, they lose control over you. Real change does not begin with perfect conditions. It begins when excuses stop being your guide and action becomes your habit. Build yourself instead of blaming life at some point. Every person must face a simple but powerful truth. You cannot control everything that happens around you, but you can always control what you build within yourself. And the quality of your life is directly connected to the quality of the person you are becoming. This is why blaming life is not only useless, it is distracting you from the only real work that matters, building yourself. Many people spend years trying to fix external problems. They wait for better conditions, better opportunities, better timing, or better people around them. They believe that once life changes, they will change. But this thinking reverses reality. Life does not change you first. You change first, and then life starts reflecting that change. Building yourself means focusing on what is inside your control. Your habits, your discipline, your mindset, your reactions, your focus, and your consistency. These are the real foundations of your future. When these foundations are weak, everything outside feels unstable. When these foundations are strong, even difficult situations become manageable. Instead of asking why life is not working in your favor, start asking what you are doing with the life you already have. Because most people are not stuck due to lack of opportunity, but due to lack of self-development. They are not growing because they are busy analyzing life instead of improving themselves. Self-building is a daily process. It does not require massive changes at once. It requires small, consistent improvements. Waking up a little earlier, controlling distractions a little more, focusing a little longer, learning a little every day. These small actions seem simple, but over time they completely reshape a person. When you focus on building yourself, something important happens. Blame starts disappearing automatically, because builders do not waste time pointing fingers. A builder is focused on creation, not complaint. A person who is building himself is too focused on progress to waste energy on excuses or external blame. Life will always have challenges. That is a permanent reality. But strong people are not those who avoid challenges. They are those who build themselves in a way that challenges cannot break them easily. Strength does not come from perfect conditions. It comes from continuous self-improvement. You may not be able to change where you are today, but you can absolutely change who you are becoming. And that is enough to change everything over time. Because when you change yourself, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your habits change. When your habits change, your results change. This is the real chain of transformation. Not blaming life, not waiting for life, but building yourself step by step until your life naturally follows your growth. So instead of pointing at life, turn your attention inward. Focus on becoming stronger, more disciplined, and more consistent. Because the moment you stop blaming life and start building yourself, your future quietly begins to change in ways you never expected. Stop blaming life. Start building yourself in the end. Everything comes down to a simple but uncomfortable truth. Life is not the main problem. Your response to life is what shapes your entire future. The moment you stop pointing fingers at circumstances, people, and situations, you take your power back. And the moment you take your power back, change becomes possible. Most people stay stuck not because life is against them, but because they remain in a cycle of blame. They keep repeating the same patterns of thinking and expecting different results. They say they want change, but they continue doing the same things every day. They want a better life, but they do not want to change themselves. This is the contradiction that keeps them trapped. Blaming life may feel easy, but it quietly removes responsibility. And without responsibility, there is no growth. Because growth only happens where ownership exists. When you accept that your habits, discipline, mindset, and decisions matter, you stop being a passive observer of your life and start becoming an active creator of it. You do not need perfect conditions to improve yourself. You do not need ideal timing or external approval. You only need the willingness to take responsibility for your next action, because your next action is always more important than your past excuses. The truth is that life will always have challenges. There will always be delays, difficulties, pressure, and uncertainty. Waiting for a problem-free life is the same as waiting forever. That is why successful people do not waste energy wishing for easier circumstances. They focus on becoming stronger within difficult circumstances. When you stop blaming life, something powerful happens inside your mind. You start focusing on solutions instead of problems. You start asking better questions. Instead of "why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "what can I do right now to improve this?" That small shift changes your entire direction. Self-change is the only real change that lasts. You cannot control everything outside, but you can always control what you do, how you think, and how you respond. And over time, those internal changes shape your external reality. Every successful person you see once faced the same struggles as everyone else. The difference is not that their life was easier. The difference is that they stopped blaming life and started building themselves. They focused on discipline, consistency, and responsibility instead of excuses. If you want a different future, you do not need to wait for life to change. You need to change your approach to life. Start small. Improve your habits. Control your time. Strengthen your discipline. Stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally. Because in the end, your life is not defined by what happens to you. It is defined by what you choose to do with what happens to you. So stop pointing at life. Stop waiting for better circumstances. Stop searching for reasons outside yourself. And start doing the real work that matters. Build yourself every single day. Even slowly. Even imperfectly. Even quietly. Because the person you become through that process will decide everything that happens next in your life. And once you understand this, you will realize the truth that changes everything. Life was never against you. It was waiting for you to take responsibility and start building yourself.